Morning everyone, my name is Cyprienne and today we're going to be making the Cedar Ridge Crochet Throw. This is a really easy pattern that's perfect for beginners and of course anyone who already knows how to crochet. It is this texture here. I'm just showing you in the cream because it's easier to see than the main part. And it's just made up of single crochet and chain stitch. And also what we're going to be doing is working in chain 2 spaces, which is really great for beginners because, you know, one of the problems that people have as beginners is figuring out where to place their stitches. So I feel like this one is an excellent crochet project for someone who's just starting out. So the main part of the blanket is actually the same stitch as the trim. So again, no new stitches to learn here. Now the one that you see in here was made by Loops and Threads Camden Wool Big. I made it quite a while ago. I'm not even sure if that yarn is still around. So today I'm going to be demonstrating using Charisma yarn, and I'll leave a complete list of what I used in the description below, but I will put up on the screen here what you need for today's video. So you can use any chunky weight yarn that you want. The only thing I would caution that is if it's not a thicker yarn that calls for an 8mm hook, your throw may end up being, well, definitely will end up being a little bit smaller. I haven't actually made in the other yarn, so I can't tell you how much smaller, but it will be. So I would try to find something like the Charisma or the Bernat Roving, but I'll put some options again in the description below for you so that you can find a yarn that's going to work for this pattern. Another great thing is that we're going to be using a 12mm hook. Now if you only have an 11.5, definitely use that. I actually started off working this blanket with the 11.5 hook, then I lost it. I think my couch ate it actually, and then I switched to the 12 and there was really no difference. Again, going down to 10mm will work, but it isn't going to have the same drape as this one here has. And the little, like, I say this is a lacy texture because you can see through it. Those will close up using a smaller yarn, or sorry, smaller hook. So I just want to caution you on those two things. So that's pretty much it. If you're a beginner, you might want to get a stitch marker just to mark the end of each row and the beginning of each row, but I will leave that to you. So let's gather up your supplies and then we'll dive right into the video. We'll see you soon. Okay, so just before we get started, I want to mention that the throw is 50 inches by 60 inches. And then on top of that, there's a 3-inch trim on all sides. So if you want to resize this blanket, it is super easy. You just want to keep your beginning chain a multiple of 2. I will leave links in the description to my blanket resizing calculator. What it does is it takes a swatch that you've made and you input the number of stitches for your swatch, and it will tell you exactly how many stitches you need to start with for the yarn that you want to use. And there is also a blanket measurement chart that you can download so that you know what size to make whatever blanket you want to make. So if you want to make a baby blanket or something, it'll tell you the size. So I'll leave links to those in the description box. But for today, you're going to want to start with a chain of 76. So because this is such a fantastic pattern for beginners, I'm going to take a moment to demonstrate the stitches. But if you already know how to crochet, what I'll do is I'll give direction at the beginning of each row with a demonstration. You can work ahead, but for beginners, I'll go back and show you how to do the stitches. So I will also leave timestamps below. I'll also leave timestamps in the description below for beginners and for those who already know how to crochet so that you can skip ahead to the parts you need to see. Okay, so for people who know how to crochet, you're just going to start with a chain of 76. And for beginners, I'm going to show you how to do the slip knot in the chain. So to make a slip knot, all you're going to do is wrap the yarn around, make an X, pinch that X with your fingers and pull the yarn through. Now what I do is I grab these two tails while I put my index finger over that loop or through that loop and pull it gently. Okay, so you can see I'm pulling on the yarn, which is attached to the skein of yarn. Then what we're going to do is just slip our hook through from back to front, pull gently on the tail that is not attached to the yarn, and that is your slip knot made. So go back and practice that as many times as you need. For me, the slip knot for some reason was the most difficult thing for me when I was learning to crochet. Okay, so to make a chain stitch, you're going to wrap your yarn around the hook, and then what I do is I pull slightly on that loop on the hook, twist my hook and pull that through, and that is your first chain made. Now, one of the most difficult things as a beginner is keeping constant tension when you're making your chain. So what I recommend is try to keep your hands loose and your stitches loose, and it's going to take some practice. So you may want to try making a swatch so that you're not faced with 76 stitches. For the demonstration, am only going to do 14. So let's go ahead and do another chain. So yarn over. Again, you're going to just pull that loop gently so that it opens up, twist your hook and pull that loop through. Okay, and again, yarn over, pull, twist, and through that loop. Now we've made 3 chains. That's 1, 2, and 3. And just remember that the loop on your hook does not count as a chain because that is not a finished stitch. Okay, so once you have mastered your chain stitches, you want to go ahead and make 76. So I'm just doing 14 like I mentioned for the demonstration. I'm going to go ahead and finish that up, and then we'll move on to row 1. We'll see you soon. Okay, so I just finished my starting chain, which I increased to 20 stitches because 14 just wasn't long enough. So what we're going to be doing for row 1, and I'll come back and I'll show beginners how to do these stitches, is we're just going to work a single crochet into the first and each stitch across. So if you're following my numbers in the pattern, you are going to end up with 75 75 single crochet at the end of row 1. Okay, so I'll put this timestamp below for row 2, and you can jump ahead and meet me there. And beginners, stick around. I'll show you how those stitches are worked. Okay, I'll just take those out. All right, so for beginners, the first thing I'm going to do is show you where your second chain is. So remember that this is an incomplete chain. So this is your first and this is your second. Now, when you work into the second chain in a row, that means that your final stitch count is going to drop by 1 because you're not working this first stitch. So to do a single crochet, you want to insert your hook under this loop here, which is the back loop, and you're going to wrap your yarn around. And again, like I did before, just give it a gentle pull to open up that stitch. Twist your yarn so you're catching, twist your hook so you're catching your yarn and pull that through. Try to keep your hands as relaxed as possible and your stitches loose enough to work, but not too loose. So you see how they just fit snugly on there. So now you're going to want to wrap your yarn around your hook, pull on these loops to open them up, twist and pull through these 2 loops on your hook, and that is your first single crochet made. Now, as a beginner, I would recommend that you actually use a stitch marker to mark this very first stitch, because it can get a little bit confusing when you're working back to see where that stitch is. And this is exactly why when you see some beginners making washcloths or anything that's supposed to be square, they get those jagged edges. It's because you're either dropping stitches or losing track of your first or last stitch. So we're going to use markers. Okay, so moving on to the second stitch, the exact same thing. You're going to insert your hook under that loop, yarn over, pull through that first one. So now you've got 2 loops on your hook. yarn over, gently pull till those open up and pull through. Okay, and again, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through that loop, yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. So we have made 3 single crochets. You can see these V's. Each one of those is a completed stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3. So you can continue on for the rest of the row. And when you count, you want to make sure that you have 75 stitches. If you have changed your stitch count, do yourself a favor, jot it down somewhere. And whatever that stitch count is, you will have 1 less. So when you're finished, go back and count each V and make sure that you have the correct amount of stitches. Now I want to note here, if you are a beginner, do not rip out your entire row of chains if your stitch count is off. It's at the very first row. So a little tip I have, if you're off 1 or 2 stitches, I would just pop them on the end, because when everything is said and done, you're not going to even notice that you did that. If you're a little bit over, you can take one out. Now, if you really mess things up, you can post in the description below and maybe I can help you out. But if your count is way off, then your starting chain may be off and you might have to start over, or maybe you just go with it. Like say you have, I don't know, 76, 78 stitches, who cares? Just go with it and don't start over again because it's too frustrating. Anyways, if you have questions, post them below and I'll help you out. Okay, so I'm going to finish working this row and then I'll come back and meet up with you. Okay, so I am at the end of row 1, and all that you're going to do is at the end of row 1, let me just finish this stitch. We're going to chain 1 and turn. So all we're going to do for row 2, and beginners, I'll come back and show you how to do this, is we're going to be working in our first stitch. We're going to single crochet, chain 2, and then we're going to place a single crochet right back into that first stitch. Then we're going to be skipping the next stitch and working in the 3rd stitch here and doing the exact same thing. So we're going to single crochet, chain 2, working back into that same stitch. We're going to work another single crochet. So this is your repeat all the way across. So you skip and then work single crochet, followed by chain 2, followed by single crochet right back in that same stitch, skip the next, and then work that pattern in the next stitch. So moving forward, what we're going to be doing is actually counting our chain 2 spaces. So at the end of row 2, you should have 38 chain spaces. So I'll finish this up and meet up with you. I'll put a timestamp below so you can skip ahead to row 3. And beginners, let's go back and I'll slow down a bit and show you how to work those stitches. Okay, so for beginners, I would mention again that this is your chain, your turning chain. So we're not working in there. We're going to work into this very first stitch. Now this is where the pattern becomes really great for beginners, because we've already worked chain stitches with our beginning chain and we've already worked single crochets with our row 1. So we're just going to insert under both loops. That is a little bit different for the single crochet. We're inserting under both loops of the single crochet below. We're yarn over, pull through. Now you still have 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through. Then we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and working right back into that same stitch where we did our first single crochet. We're going to insert our hook, grab it, and complete another single crochet. Now in the pattern, if you have the pattern with you, you'll see that those 3 stitches or 4 stitches, because there's 2 chains, they're shown in brackets, and that indicates that all those stitches are worked into 1 stitch. Now we're going to skip our next single crochet and work that same pattern of stitches in the next. So that would be in your 3rd stitch. So insert under those 2 loops, yarn over, and finish your single crochet, followed by 2 chains. Again, insert where you just did that last single crochet, insert your hook and finish another single crochet. And that is creating chain 2 spaces. So you're going to continue that pattern across, skipping 1 stitch and working in the next, a single crochet followed by 2 chain stitches followed by another single crochet. So I'm going to finish that and I'll show you how to end this row and we'll move on to row 3. Okay, so I'm at the end of row 2, and this is where you're going to be thankful that you used your stitch marker if you're a beginner, because you can clearly see that this is the last stitch of the row that you need to work into. So we'll just slide that marker out and work in that last stitch, another single crochet, chain 2, and another single crochet. Now at this point you want to go and check that you have 38 chain 2 spaces. So you can just slip your finger in between to count them. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. You could also just count your little peaks here and know that that is representing a chain 2 space. Okay, moving on to row 3. This is for beginners and people who have been working ahead. All we're going to be doing is chaining 1 and turning. And now what we're going to be doing is working into those chain 2 spaces, the exact same pattern as we have been. So you're going to work a single crochet. Again, beginners, do yourself a favor, slide that slip marker. Can we just rename them slip markers, please? Because that's what I always say. Stitch marker. Put your stitch marker in there, finish your chain 2, and work another single crochet. And then working in the next chain 2 space, we're going to work a single crochet, followed by 2 chains, followed by another single crochet. So repeat that pattern all the way across. And if you're not sure where you're working, you can open up that chain 2 space, make sure that you've got your single crochet to each side, and then insert in the middle, so that you want to make sure you're not going to inadvertently work between your single crochet. So just work in there, repeat that all the way across. I'm going to put Virgin River back on because Chris, who helps me with my patterns, turned me onto it and I have been binge watching. So I'm going to work to the end of that row and we'll meet up and I'll tell you how to continue on with the rest of the pattern. We'll see you soon. Okay, so I am at the end of row 3. I'm just going to finish off by placing a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet in that last stitch. Now that is your pattern repeat. Yes, I had to tie a knot in my yarn and I joined the yarn there. So that is the pattern repeat for the entire throw. So you can work that for 72 rows or until it measures 60 inches or whatever length you want. So I'm going to continue on with my sample and then we'll meet up and we will next be working a row around the entire throw to get ready to, oh, my puppy dog is about to jump onto my dark blue throw. Let me move that. And then we're going to move on to the contrast trim, which I really love this. Now this I used 2 strands of worsted weight held together, but you don't have to do that. You can use the same yarn in a contrast color or you can make it in the same yarn. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and finish that up and we'll meet up, I guess, for you guys, probably in a few days, for me in a few hours, and we will move on to the next part. If you're enjoying the video so far and you're learning something new, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment below if you are a beginner and if this tutorial has been helpful. Maybe you want to consider subscribing, and then that way you'll get notified every time I post a new video. if you hit the bell notification. All right, I will see you. Sorry, I want to jump back in here for beginners. I mentioned on the fly about this knot. When you're ready to start a new skein of yarn, do yourself a favor, just tie them together. These tails will be worked in when we finish the throw. With this particular pattern, it's just easiest to do it this way, and in the end there's no effect on the finished item. Okay, anyways, as I said, if you have questions, let me know below. Bye. Okay, so I'm back now. I finished my square. I absolutely love this stitch. I think this might be taking over as my favorite stitch. Okay, so moving on to the very last row, we are just going to chain one and turn. And then what we are going to be doing is working 2 single crochets into each chain 2 space. So just go ahead and work the single crochets into each one of the chain 2 spaces across. So I'll finish up this row and then we'll meet up and continue on. Okay, so I am just about to finish that last row. Now, if you made the crochet dishcloth, this is done slightly different from that, so fear not, just work along with me and everything will make sense. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do at the end of this row is we're finding the very last single crochet, and we're going to actually be working 6 single crochets into that. So that's 1. And I would mark this one with your stitch marker. This is going to help when we work on the finishing round. Okay, so let's just put your stitch marker into your first single crochet there. So 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now what we're going to be doing is we're working along the side of the throw. So you want to work a single crochet into the end of each row. So what you're actually going to be doing is working, a stitch here and a stitch here. So you're going to do that all the way along. So that's 1, don't need to count them, but just keep going down the side of the throw, working in each stitch on either side of that post. So I am going to work along and then we'll meet up for the next corner. Okay, so I'm at the last stitch at the side of the throw, and again I'm going to be working 6 single crochet into that corner stitch. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I just need to do one more. Okay, now this has taken us now to the bottom of the throw, which was our starting chain. So what you're going to do is you're going to work single crochets all the way along the bottom. So just try to find where your chain is and work your single crochet. You can see the space here. That's where you want to insert your hook and work all the way along. Now this is what you're going to be doing for the rest of the throw. So you're going to work along the bottom, placing 6 single crochet, which will take you to the next side, and then you're going to work a single crochet at the end of each row, and then you're going to do 6 single crochet in the corner, and then you're going to work another row of single crochet across the top, ending where you put that stitch marker. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I have some leftover Charisma in denim, and I am going to be working it in that. And I'm going to insert a picture here of the throw, and this is where on the blue and cream throw I made, I used 2 strands of It's actually chunky weight yarn, but the London Fog is super thin, so I used 2 strands held together to meet the same yarn gauge as the yarn that I used for the base of the throw. Okay, so we'll meet up and then we can talk about that more then. All right, so I have just finished my round of my throw and I'm ready to change my yarn to the contrast yarn for the trim. Now I just want to show you quickly here this original one that I've done. This is actually considered a chunky yarn, but it is not chunky in my mind. It is very thin. So for my contrast yarn on this one, I held 2 strands together. So I would say that this is more the equivalent of a worsted weight yarn. And again, I'm going to put everything I used for the blue throw into the description so you can see. Now for demonstration purposes, I am going to use Charisma yarn, but I do want to mention if you're changing your yarn, just make up a little swatch, 4 inches by 4 inches, or just a little bit to make sure that the gauge is the same. Because if it changes, you could start getting puckering in your throw. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the blue yarn. And for anybody who doesn't know how to change colors, I will show you how to do that here. I'm going to do a little bit slow for beginners because for the throw, I told you just to tie the knot because that is the easiest way. All right, so I'm just going to finish off working. Oh, no, I'm not doing the. So I just worked the last stitch and now I'm going to start in the first stitch where I put my stitch marker. Now I'm actually going to undo this last single crochet so that I can show you from start to finish how I do the color change. Okay, so what I do is I start my single crochet and then I finish the stitch with my contrast yarn. So you're just going to grab the blue and pull that through. And then what that does is it leaves a nice clean end to your color change. So that single crochet, the top of that single crochet is still in the original color. Okay, and then you'll just start into the next stitch as usual. So for the contrast yarn for the first round, like I mentioned before, you're using the same stitch pattern as you used in the main part of the throw. So you're going to start with a single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet right back into that stitch. Then you're going to skip a stitch and then work in the next with the single crochet, chain 2, single crochet. So you're going to follow that all the way around the whole border of the blanket. So let's go ahead and do that, and then I'll meet up and show you what to do for round 2. Okay, see you soon. There it is so far. Those 2 colors are super pretty together. Okay, we'll talk to you soon. Okie dokie, so I am at the end of the first round of the trim, and all we're going to do is join with a slip stitch to that first single crochet. We're going to chain 1 and turn, and then working back the opposite way into the chain 2 spaces, we're going to do exactly what we did in the first round. Okay, so you're going to go ahead and work that pattern in every chain 2 space around. So that's all you need to do for the trim. I made 4 rounds of the trim, but of course you can make your trim as thick or as thin as you want. And for those who need to know how to weave in the ends and fasten off, you can come back at the end of the video and I will show you that. But for now, I'll say thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you love the Cedar Ridge Crochet Throw. Make sure if you complete it, let me know what colors you chose and tag me on Instagram. My Facebook got hacked, so I'm barely on there anymore, but I sure love seeing what everybody makes. Okay, so I'm back with my original throw here. I'm almost out of yarn, but I want to show you quickly how to fasten off. So all you're going to do is join to that very first single crochet with a slip stitch, then yarn over and pull that through. Now, normally you would have to cut it off, but my yarn is short enough that I don't need to, so I'm just going to go right into weaving in those ends. So what I like to do when I'm when I'm weaving in my ends, I've got this huge throw here, is I try to find a spot where I'm going to feel some resistance against the needle. So that means do not work into open spaces. I'm going to go right through that single crochet there, and that's going to provide lots of resistance. Now you're going to have a lot of ends to weave in because we used, well, could be up to 10, 12 skeins of yarn depending on the yarn you chose. So what you want to make sure that you're weaving all those ends in on the same side. So that will become the wrong side of the throw, but of course you're hoping that you're not going to see the ends. So here I'm picking another spot where I'm feeling some resistance against that needle, and that will stop the yarn from coming out. So I'm just going to go back here, and then let me just show you something that I use to stop these ends from unweaving. Okay, so from back in my sewing days, I used to use Fray Check, and it's like a really watered down glue. You will just put a tiny little spot on the base of the stitch. You can do this before or after you cut it off. Just a tiny little spot like that, and it will soak into the yarn. I don't know if you can see how that's being absorbed. And then that way your stitches won't come undone. I'll leave a link to this for Amazon in the description, and a bottle will last you forever. I have no idea how much it costs anymore because I've probably had this for about 10 years. You want to just make sure that you keep it sealed really tight. All right, so that is everything for today. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you're a beginner, let me know how you made out. Was there things that I could improve on the video to make it easier for you to follow? Yeah, so that's everything. So thanks for joining me today. Until next time, bye-bye.